I was a delivery driver, but my last drop-off turned into a terrifying nightmare. I never should have opened that door. Instinct screamed at me. I could feel it, deep in my gut. Yet here I was, staring at a crumbling, decrepit house at the end of a twisted dirt road, swallowed by darkness. The chill in the air cut through my jacket, and I could hear the wind whispering secrets I didn't want to know. I gripped the delivery bag tighter, my fingers trembling. It was a typical Tuesday. I loved my job, the road beneath my wheels, the small chats with customers. But now my routine was shattered. I had arrived at an old address. The house felt abandoned, like it hadn't seen a soul for years. The once bright paint was peeling, the windows gaping like empty eyes. Shadows danced inside, shifting with the flickering light that barely illuminated the porch. As I approached, I felt the weight of silence. It was oppressive. Not a sound, not even a creature stirring. I knocked hard. Nothing. I waited, breath caught in my throat. Then, a shuffling noise from inside. It sent a shiver down my spine. Was someone in there? My heart raced as I shifted on my feet, an undeniable urge to run, but I was too curious. I opened the door, and it creaked ominously, revealing a dim hallway filled with a musty smell that burned my nose. The air felt stagnant, thick with the weight of unspoken words. As I stepped inside, cold air brushed against my skin like icy fingers, causing me to shudder. Something wasn't right. Then I heard it. A soft thud from upstairs, followed by a low whisper, just out of reach. My legs wanted to pull me back, but my feet were glued to the floor. I wanted to call out, but my voice was trapped. The shadows grew longer, creeping toward me. I took a step back, my heart pounding and my ears thump. 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 I peered deeper into the darkness. Did I just see something move? My breath hitched. A figure? Pale and distorted, hovering just beyond the next room. I blinked, and it was gone. The fading echo of my pulse grew deafening. I felt exposed, like I was being watched, observed from the corners. Another thud. Stronger this time. Fear gripped me. I turned to flee, but the door I entered through slammed shut, sending a shock through me. I whipped around, panic rising. The whispering grew louder, swirling around me like a storm. I stumbled backward, my hands grazing the wall, searching for an escape that wasn't there. And then I saw it. A glimpse. In the darkness, just for a heartbeat of face, twisted and contorted, eyes shining with something inhuman. My scream lodged in my throat, suffocated by terror. I felt the world tilt, crumbling beneath me, as I gasped for breath. What was happening? I needed to escape. Just then, the shadows began to close in, their grips tightening, pulling me toward what? The last thing I remembered was the feeling of icy breath against my neck. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The darkness swallowed me whole, and for an endless moment, I was suspended in the void. These were not the comforting shadows of a familiar room. This was a malevolent haze, infused with an unimaginable dread that seeped into my bones. I felt weightless, yet at the same time, as if 1,000 hands were pressing me down, holding me captive in an unseen abyss. With a gasp, I plunged back into reality, the violent thrum of my heartbeat echoing in the silence. I was on the floor now, the damp wood biting into my skin. The moonlight filtered through grimy windows, casting a distorted glow over the room. Groaning, I pushed myself up, blinking against the disorientation that clung to me like cobwebs. What had just happened? The last fragments of my memory flickered like dying fireflies. The face, that twisted face of pure malice. I swallowed hard, my throat dry and constricted. The house loomed, a silent predator waiting for my next move. I had to leave. I couldn't stay here a moment longer. I stumbled toward the heavy door, but when I reached for the handle, it felt foreign, moist and cold, the metal seeping a chill into my palm. I gritted my teeth and pulled, but the door remained stubbornly shut, as if held captive by the malice that saturated the air around me. Let me out, I screamed, my voice cracking against the oppressive stillness. But the house only responded with silence, the kind that gnawed at the edges of sanity. Desperation clawed at my insides, and I turned back into the haunting embrace of the hallway. Shadows danced along the walls, shapes swirling and merging in a grotesque ballet. Their whispers wrapped around me, coiling like a snake, taunting me with their unintelligible murmurs. I could feel them pulling me deeper, luring me toward the stairs that ascended into darkness that I hesitated, dread pooling in my gut. Should I go up? But the thought of remaining alone in the stagnant air forced my feet forward. With each step, the hardwood creaked under my weight, echoing through the suffocating silence. As I reached the landing, I paused. Flickering candlelight flickered from an ajar door at the end of the corridor, casting a golden halo that seemed almost inviting. An odd sense of warmth emanated from it, pulling me closer. Against all instincts, I approached. My heart raced in an erratic rhythm, unsure if it was fear or morbid curiosity. Pushing the door open, the hinges protested, the sound grating against the tranquil ambience. Inside, a small room housed a single table, upon which sat a tattered journal, its edges worn, as if it had been handled by many trembling hands. Ghostly light seemed to emanate from it, swirling in patterns that captivated my senses. But as I moved closer, I caught a glimpse of the walls, covered in childish drawing stick figures twisted and contorted in an eternal scream. My stomach churned at the sight, chills racing across my skin. Who had lived here? Who had filled this place with such agony? Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind me, and the candlelight flickered violently. In that breathless moment, the walls began to pulse, the drawings writhed, their faces twisting into expressions of unadulterated terror. I turned, pounding against the door, but it wouldn't budge, stuck, like my heart in my throat. Then I heard the whispers transformed into a cacophony of voices, a haunting symphony echoing around me. Join us, they beckoned, dripping with malice. I recoiled instinctively, confusion and fear flooding my mind. In a desperate act, I flung the journal open. Hundreds of pages fluttered wildly, as if alive, landing on a particularly gruesome entry, a drawing of me, complete with the date, today. I twisted the page closer, my breath hitching as a new realization washed over me. I was not alone in this house. In the flickering shadows behind me, I caught a glimpse, a figure, half-formed and sorrowful, hovering just within the range of the candlelight, eyes wide, mirroring my own confusion and terror. It pointed toward the diary, and its lips moved silently, forming words I could not hear. Yet the meaning crashed over me like a tidal wave. I was not the first one here, and I might not be leaving at all. The whispering crescendoed, blending with the pulsing of the walls. They were circling in on me, ever closer, straining my sanity as darkness seeped in. And then, like an arrow aimed straight at my heart, came a voice deep and ancient. Your time has come. Then, the candles extinguished in a breathless gasp, pulling me into absolute darkness, a void filled with desperation and unanswered questions. And just as I lost my footing in the all-consuming blackness, I felt something cold and clammy wrap around my ankle, pulling me downward, deeper into the abyss. The sensation of being dragged was terrifying. Panic surged through me as I clawed at the floorboards, my fingernails scraping against the rough wood, desperate for purchase as the unseen force tugged me from the remnants of the candlelight. My pulse quickened, thrumming in my ears like war drums, drowning out the whispers that flocked around me. With a surge of adrenaline, I managed to twist my body, my hands grasping at the eerie light that flickered from the journal. It felt warm against my skin, almost pleading with me to hold on. The grip on my ankle intensified, a fading combination of pain and ice that felt too alive. No, I cried out, fear turning my voice into a hoarse murmur barely heard over the din of whispering shadows. Don't take me. But whatever haunted this house was relentless. It yanked me closer to the ground, the chill creeping higher along my leg. As I resisted, I could feel the whole room shift. The walls seemed to throb in rhythm with the panic gathering within me, as if the very structure of the house was a sentient entity hungry for my despair. Frantically, I tore my eyes away from the figure that had once loomed so closely, afraid to look and see the true horror it embodied. Instead, I focused on the journal, its pages fluttering like frightened wings. I flipped backward, my heart pounding as I searched for answers while the coldness on my ankle threatened to steal away my will. I landed on another entry, filled with a frantic scrawl that read, "They take you when you least expect it. Trust no one. There is no escape." I felt sick, and as I read, the whispers morphed into frantic screams, shrill and stirring cacophony of voices trapped in torment, urging me to join their misery. I slammed the diary shut, but the voices licked at my consciousness, battering against the walls of my mind. I struggled against the icy grip, feeling it slip slightly, a momentary reprieve. "Please let me go," I begged, tears rain-coating my cheeks as I felt a flicker of hope surge within me. But then came a malevolent laughter, echoing around me, dark and twisted, gliding along the walls in an audible wave. Suddenly, I was overcome with the sensation of being lifted. I was pulled into the air, floating for an instant before slamming back against the floor. Agony lanced through my spine. The darkness pulled, enveloping me completely, and the oppressive weight of despair filled my lungs, suffocating me. "No," I howled again, raising my hands in defiance. But it only seemed to amuse my captors. The entity that gripped my ankle became a mass of shadows, drawing closer, its identity coalescing into a grotesque assortment of faces, each one more tortured than the last. They reached towards me with arms of writhing tendrils, weaving through the air like a storm of despair, beckoning, begging me to join them in the shadowy turmoil, that I could see their eyes burning remnants of humanity fused with the malevolence of their captivity. They were not trying to hurt me. They were drowning in their own grief, and in my absence, they yearned to pull another life into their abyss. They wanted me to understand. I fought back with all my strength, heart racing as I kicked my leg free from their grasp. Just as I began to rise, the house throbbed in anticipation. The ground shook beneath me, and the journal slipped from my fingertips, landing with a sickening finality. Then silence fell. Once more I felt the cold hand now traveling up my leg, encasing my body in an unbearably chilling embrace. I gritted my teeth against the fear, my breath coming in rapid bursts. A spectral voice echoed softly, clear and cold like the touch of death. "Join us forever." In that moment, the feeling of complete hopelessness enveloped me. I stumbled backward, away from the apparition, crashing into a wall, my heart hammering like a trapped bird. The shadows twisted in jubilation, their whispers transforming into thunderous laughter, echoing through the room, reverberating in waves of pure horror. As my back hit the wall, I felt a new presence emerge from the shadows, something larger, darker, a mass that loomed behind the tortured faces. It stepped forward, blurring into focus. Stretched fingers adorned with glistening nails curled toward me, elongated and oppressive. The mouth opened wide, a gaping void that seemed to swallow all light. In a terror-induced haze, I stumbled to the far corner of the room, eyes fixed on the being that had now revealed itself, my body trembling uncontrollably. Just beyond the shadow, I could see the outline of a door, a possible escape from this nightmare. But as I took a step toward it, the shadows twisted, the figures crying out, their desperate hands reaching for me in a heartbreaking farewell, as the monstrous entity lunged forward, ready to reclaim another soul. "Your time has come," it echoed once more, the resonance of its voice shaking the ground beneath me, and with the final crushing weight of despair clawing at my collarbone. I heard a snap, a sound that would mark the end of something I had yet to fully understand. The snap resonated in the silence that followed, a sound like the echo of a bone breaking, unmistakable and cruelly final. At that moment, I felt a thin tether binding me to reality, fraying, pulling taut. I could almost feel the shadows around me convulsing with malignant glee, feeding off my growing dread. I thought I saw a flicker of light from the small, dust-caked window, an agonizing beacon mocking me with the idea of safety beyond my reach. Any notion of escape sent a sensation through me that was both exhilarating and paralyzing. As I shuffled toward that flicker, I sensed the atmospheric shift. A cold gust coursed through the room as if the house were inhaling deeply, preparing for a feast of despair. The shadows transformed all around me, illustrating a tapestry of despair's swirling storm of anguished faces that implored me in desperate silence. I stumbled into the wall, catching my breath, feeling the imagined warmth of the once-distant sunlight slip from my grasp. And then, I heard Ida's soft, low growl emerging from the entity now looming closer, reassuring me I was already ensnared within its web of shadows. Suddenly, the grasp around my ankle reignited like a serpent striking. I fell to the ground, darkness closing in, the chill seeping into my bones. The laughter of the tortured souls surrounded me, reverberating as glowing eyes blinked into existence, shimmering in the otherwise opaque black. "Leave us," I shouted, scrambling to inch away, but my body felt like lead, weighed down by an unseen anchor. Despair coursed through Meteor collective pain mingled with my own, a grotesque symphony of torment drowning out rational thought. Each vivid cry felt as if it were a shard of glass embedding itself deeper within me. Then, I felt a fleeting warmth on my arm. Peering down, I saw strands of the very darkness that enthralled me twisting around my wrist, contracting, driving deeper into my flesh as though it intended to merge with me, fuse our sorrows eternally. I screeched in horror, tearing at it, but the more I flayed at the shadows, the further they penetrated, replacing my blood with a glaring chill. The room pulsated with a malevolent energy, illuminated only by the flickering embers of my hopia, forgotten memory of the outside world that now felt impossibly far removed. I had to move. The Duran illusory escape called to me with a feral need, promising fleeting salvation hidden behind its worn, weathered frame that I won't be taken. I yelled defiantly, trying to rise but falling again, a fallen soldier in a battle I never wanted to fight. As I gathered what little resolve I had left, the whispers grew silent, the atmosphere thickening with palpable dread. They were waiting, and I knew that at any moment, they would descend upon me, true hunters claiming their prey. With every ounce of strength, I clawed my way toward the door, feeling the echoes of taunting laughter swell behind me, relentless and salivating. At last, my fingers grasped the cool, rusted handle, a long-forgotten remnant of a time when this place hadn't been suffocated by its own shadows. I turned it click. The sound reverberated in the silence, shaking me to the core. The door creaked ominously, promising freedom on the other side. Just as I gathered a breath to pull it open, I caught the sudden movement of the being with its elongated limbs shimmering like an oil slick. It surged forward, tearing through the shadows as if they were mere drapes to be brushed aside, its mouth gaping wide, primal hunger flickering in the darkness of its throat. The door began to shudder, vibrating violently, cold seeping through the cracks, its hinges groaning in protest. "Don't leave," the tortured faces whispered, their countenances twisted between agony and longing. They were once innocent but now marred by the darkness that claimed their lives. Offering me a warning and invitation laced with despair, I waited for an eternity in an excruciating heartbeat. The being was on the cusp of obliterating what little hope remained within me. Just as the door gave a final ominous squeal, its surface splitting beneath the pressure of my decision, I pushed it open, but not before something sharp slashed at my ankle. Staggering forward, I collapsed through the threshold, into a void fueled not by the light beyond, but by the relentless anticipation of nightmares yet unveiled. As I hit the ground, a chilling voice, no longer a whisper but a roar, breached the silence, shattering my senses. "You will not escape, you will be ours." And that was when I realized I had not stepped into freedom, but into a deeper layer of darkness itself. The last glimpse of the room I left behind dissolved into chaos, as the shadow stretched open its crescent maw, revealing a yawning abyss of endless horrors and the mercy of oblivion. The ground beneath me was not solid but a swirling mass of cold, slick darkness that morphed and twitched, encroaching on my frail form as I struggled to regain my footing. I clutched my head, battling the dizziness that swirled within, fighting against the magnetic pull of the horrific abyss around me. A cacophony of anguished wails spiraled into the air, curdling my blood with each penetrating cry. This was not a realm of refuge. It was a nexus of despair that wanted to swallow me whole. In a frantic instinct, I forced myself to crawl, fingertips digging into the soupy darkness that left trails of frostbite in its wake. Around me, I could feel the breath of unseen thing shot, rancid and stifling. Every sound seemed to penetrate the fabric of my brain, a transmission of torment in a language beyond comprehension. I was ensnared in a ghostly realm. The atmosphere warped and pulsated like a living creature, its very essence hungry for my fear. Yes, I looked up, clenching my eyes against the relentless shadows that eagerly slithered forth. I caught the dim flicker of distant lights. They danced precariously like stars caught in a nightmarish tempest. Drawing nearer, each point of brightness oddly resembled halos, some warm, some cold, each representing souls suspended between worlds. The urgency to reach those lights wrapped itself around my heart, a rope tugging me toward salvation even as doubt gnawed at my resolve. That I pressed on, my breath quickening, until I broke through the writhing darkness and into a patch of shimmering illumination. But instead of relief, dread washed over me like icy water when I recognized the figures gathered beyond the light, misshapen amalgamations of what was once human, their bodies grotesquely twisted, thrumming with desperate energy as they shifted in synchronization. Their faces wore masks of anguish, forever etched in an expression of longing mixed with invisible chains binding them to this chilling realm. "Look, it's the new one," one voice rasped, hissing like a constricted serpent. It echoed through me, awakening the gut-wrenching realization that these wretched remnants had once lived, loved, and hoped for more, yet they were now mere shadows of memories trapped, just like I was. I could do nothing but stand frozen, watching as they circled around me, their teeth glimmering in the eerie luminescence like daggers ready to slice through any trace of resistance. "Join us," another voice cooed, deceptively soothing, laced with an undertone of mockery. "Become part of the hunger." They shrieked in a chorus that resonated deep within my bones. Panic surged up my throat, threatening to spill over. My instincts screamed that I was on the precipice of a very real demise, one that would blur the lines between the predator and the prey. The ground beneath me shuddered violently, and I could feel the very essence of despair intensifying, coiling over my skin like an imbued curse. The lights dimmed, casting me back into the shadows, and the amalgamations became restless, lunging toward me with barely restrained eagerness. "Stop," I croaked, desperation seeping into my every word. I turned on my heels and sprinted blindly through the oppressive shadows, heart racing, each frantic pulse echoing loudly in my ears. I could feel them traipsing behind me, relentless, their whispers rising into an insatiable roar that clawed toward my consciousness. Suddenly, a hand reached out from the darkness, its cold fingers tightening around my wrist, dragging me backward into the undulating abyss. I thrashed, kicking out with every ounce of strength I could muster, but I fell instead into a gaping hole that opened beneath me, swallowing me into its depths. As I plummeted, shapes flickered in and out of view, snatches of lives once lived, trapped just as I was. Their eyes met mine for a fleeting moment, screaming, pleading, suffocating in loss. I could feel their desperation wrapping around my throat, choking off my air, urging me to join them in their unfathomable fate. Just as the darkness threatened to cocoon me completely, I landed with a thud on a damp surface. The breath rushed from my lungs, and the metallic tang of fear and decay filled my senses. I looked up, the dimness cradling me tightly, and what I saw made my blood run cold. A massive door loomed ahead, carved with chilling symbols of despair and desperation, pulsing like a living creature. Before I could push to my feet, the murmurs escalated into frantic shouts, and through the door, something began to move, cylindrical shadows that twisted grotesquely as if a dark force was preparing to breach this prison. I could only stare wide-eyed as it began to crack open, the breach oozing malevolence and enlightenment, so close to the horror I had just escaped, yet so far from actual safety. And from within that door came a voice, a chilling command echoing through the clamoring cacophony of the souls that surrounded me. "Your soul is mine to consume." I could feel the very fabric of reality tremble, and in that heart-stopping moment, reality spun, forcing me into a choice that would seal my fate whichever way it lay. As shadows surged toward me, I knew whatever lay behind that door, I had to confront it or be consumed by the echoes of the lost forever. The door creaked open, a gruesome maw in the darkness, revealing a sickening glow that emanated from within, a pulsating, sickly yellow light that seemed to warp the air itself. I blinked against the brilliance, trying to catch a glimpse of the thing that beckoned from behind the threshold. A putrid scent washed over me, the kind that had settled in the corners of forgotten places, a blend of decay and desperation that made my stomach churn. As the shadows around me dwindled toward the door, I could feel a tingle of energy crackling in the air, thickening with each passing moment. The anguished souls that had been circling me earlier now quieted, their faces twisted with a mix of dread and perverse hope as they regarded the cracking threshold. They knew something I did not, and it filled me with a horrifying dread. I took a shaky step back, the cold grip of despair tightening around my shoulders like a vice. But there was no backing away now. I could feel the gnawing whispers begin to shift within the ethereal fog surrounding me, a chorus of urging that penetrated my thoughts, urging me towards that door, coaxing me as if I were a moth drawn to a flame. With my heart racing, I fought the compulsion, clenching my fists to stave off the creeping pull. In that moment of indecision, a shadow unfurled from the doorway. It slithered out like smoke-made flesh, and as it coalesced, I could make out the glint of ravenous eyes trapped in a grotesque mask of visage, both mesmerizing and repulsive. It hovered just within the light, groaning as if it were hungry not just for flesh, but for memories, dreams, and hopes, all meant to be devoured and synthesized into its very essence. "Come closer," it crooned, the voice like honey laced with poison. "Let me show you the inevitable. Let me free you from the chains of your own despair. Join us as we rise from these depths." Images flickered in my mind, reflections of my life, laughter of friends, the warmth of fleeting love, the mundane moments I had taken for granted. With them came sharper memories of regret, pain, and abandonment, the things I had locked away in the dilapidated corners of my heart. The shadows began to grow restless, each delineated figure inching toward the door, faces contorting in excitement as if they yearned for the reunion promised by the creature lurking behind. And oh, I screamed, shattering the suffocating grip of their call. Something within me ignited. A primal urge to survive surged up through my legs, driving me to dart toward the door with a reckless abandon. But instead of the expected freedom, I halted abruptly, surrounded by faces mounted in twisted agony. The amalgamation surged at me, pressing against my skin like a wave that threatened to break. "Oh, you think you can escape?" The creature snarled, its voice a venomous whisper that dripped with the essence of my fears. "You're already ours." Determination coursed through me, brave and stupid all at once. I flung myself toward the door, craving the splendor of light and a laughable hope for safety. My fingers slipped over damp wood, ancient and slick with the residue of countless destinies long consumed. As I pushed against it, the ground quaked. The thrumming darkness beneath my feet wriggled in protest. A beast awakened from a slumber. "Fool!" The creature shrieked, and the once innocent whispers transformed into a deafening roar, echoing through the hollow expanse. "You do not control the way out. Your fate is ours." Forever twisted in the blackness. With an almighty shove, the door gave way, swinging open to reveal a kaleidoscope of pasts, a swirling torrent of memories tumbling through blackened corridors of despair. Faces from my life, just as frayed and tortured as those shadows, flashed before me in a nightmarish frenzy. Yelling, crying out, their eyes pleading with me to remember, to be drawn back into the void that as I stumbled through. The ground beneath me shuddered and split, sending tendrils of darkness snaking up around my feet, pulling me back towards the door, where the creature loomed all-knowing, all-consuming. With every ounce of adrenaline, I reached out toward a fragment of light barely within grasp, only to feel the anguished souls tightening their grip on my limbs, dragging me down like anchors in an ocean of despair. "Your soul is mine to consume," reverberated the voice as I went against the void, fighting against the magnetic pull. Just as I felt the jagged claws of despair sink into my flesh, I caught a glimpse of my own helpless reflection lurking in the shadows, a grinning, darker version of myself waiting in the periphery of my consciousness. And with one final, desperate scream, I was caught between two worlds, Neither escape nor surrender offered any promise. In that moment, the door shuddered shut, and I was left teetering on the edge of oblivion, no longer certain where I stood as if a choice loomed before me, malevolent and insatiable, ready to seal my fate forever. My body convulsed as I spiraled into a space caught in the throes of twilight and in between realm teeming with layered sorrow, where light clashed with shadows that pulsated like a living thing. In that fractured moment, I felt unspeakable terror and an unsettling calm wash over me. Shadows nibbled on the edges of my sanity, threatening to fill me, to devour what little remained of my essence. The pain in my limbs intensified, the sharp fingers of despair still vying for dominance. My heart raced as new horrors began to weave through this distorted reality. As a flicker of light illuminated the haze before me, unnatural shapes began to take form, eloquently twisted figures swaying in a synchronized dance of euphoria and agony, their faces melting into grotesque smile faces that glimmered with a sickly glint, mischievously inviting or warning of the doom that awaited. "Welcome home," chirped a figure that emerged closest to me. It wore a dress of rippling darkness that fluttered like fabric of smoke, and glacial blue eyes stared vacantly, revealing glimpses of a tortured history beneath its skin, of familiarity that elicited an unsettling recognition. "You," I gasped, coming face to face with what was once my best friend Lena. The once vivacious woman now lambasted by despondent sorrow embodied in her unblinking gaze. "You died, this can't be real. I exist now in the space between," she murmured, a smile cracking her parched lips like a dam on the verge of collapse. "We've all been waiting for you. The choice wasn't yours to make, it was always ours." The shadows shifted restlessly, their limbs elongating toward me, as if our once shared laughter sustained them. Lena held out a hand, though there was an emptiness in her outstretched fingers that crackled like static in the air, igniting cells of terror within my chest. "Join us, Sarah. We found a way to live forever, to feed on what must be forgotten. No more pain, only bliss in the darkness. No, I can't," I choked out, the grips of phantom memories coiling tighter around me. From beyond Lena, the other figures grinned wider, encircling me in malevolent delight, a circle of souls tainted by despair, their voices rising to a crescendo that penetrated the fragile seams of my consciousness. "You think this is a choice? You are chosen. A delivery driver, no less. How predictable," they hissed through cracked, toothy grins. The layers of their lives unfolded around my images of hauntings clutched by fleeting moments. I could see them in every shadow, trapped in the cycle of despair. I tried to block it out, but visions of broken friendships and lost chances washed over me like cold waves crashing against a stone shore. The din of their thoughts was unbearable. Suddenly, there came a resonating boom that surged through this nightmare realm, the very fabric of existence rippling as the walls of this grotesque theater trembled. Panic exploded in me, bursting through the paralysis that held me captive. "What is happening?" Lena's eyes widened, a flash of fear crossing her features. "The gatekeeper knows you're resisting. He can't have you slip through. We must hold on." The shadowy figures grew frantic, a web of desperate energy thrumming in the air that tightened around my throat as they pulled me closer to the nexus of their chaos. "Reclaim what was stolen," they shrieked, the now ravenous gaze upon me powerful enough to rattle the heavens and earth. With sheer strength rippling through me, I lunged toward the rift of warmth and twilight, hoping to break free. But the shadow's grip was cruel and unyielding, weaving their malice into my veins. "Leave her," Lena cried with a hint of what felt like remorse, a flicker of the friend I had known surfacing beneath layers of dread. "It's too late for the rest of us." But even as she spoke, darkness squelched through where hope endeavored to bloom. A voice like thunder cascaded from the depths of the surrounding chaos, a presence both terrible and enticing. "You will become one of us, dear heart. Resistance is but a candle awaiting its extinguishing." And just as I thought I could pry free from the grip of their suffocating grasp, I felt an intangible pressure rise, enlarging with brutality until I could only evoke a scream that echoed into oblivion. Suddenly, with a cataclysmic rupture that tore the air apart, a fissure opened overhead, showering us in shards of glimmering light tinged with a ghastly green hue. "Look!" Lena shrieked, terror overshadowing her smile. The gatekeeper has come. In that very instant, a colossal shadow plunged down from the Braicham mass of sinewy darkness, expanding and constraining the unraveling fabric of our world, an insatiable maw at its center yawning open against the taut cacophony of thinly veiled terror. With no notion of what awaited me, my heart pounding with dread, I stumbled backward. The last thing I saw was the wretched sight of the creature, grotesque and all-consuming. As I was forcibly drawn away from Lena and the other lost souls each corner, I turned into deeper darkness, the world around me imploding into a chaos I could scarcely comprehend. Time itself twisted precariously as I came to face the judgment of the gate, my screams mingled with a monstrous laugh echoing through the shadows, a promise that my true horror was only just beginning. The pressure of the darkness intensified around me, dragging my consciousness into an abyss that felt both alien and eerily familiar. The air grew thick with the scent of decay, swirling around me like a suffocating fog. I was lost in a void of swirling shadows, my efforts to escape growing daily more pointless. Beneath the pulsating rhythm of my heart, I felt the clutches of something malevolent, an entity waiting, watching, and feeling every tremor of my fear. Suddenly, the thinning veil of darkness pulsated, revealing brief glimpses of a distorted landscape. My mind's eye caught sinister flashes of a twisted town with homes awash in shadows, streetlights flickering as if they struggled against the thorns of the night, each dim light an eye, glaring at me, judging me. I stood transfixed, heart racing as figures weaved through the streets like marionettes tangled in their own strings, their empty eyes locked on me, a myriad of faces I once knew. Sarah, a voice whispered from the distance, fragile and faded, yet distinct. It was familiar, sweet, and soothing, and beckoned to me like a moth drawn to the flame. Pushing through the overwhelming despair, I strained to follow the voice. Desperate to grasp hold of something real in this circus of shadows, that I stumbled forward, my feet moving through the muck of memories that clung to me like wet rags. Each step conjured lost moments, the sweetness of laughter turning sour in the back of my throat. There were flashes of dinner parties gone wrong, friends quarreling, and whispers of betrayal echoing through the halls of my thwarted life. The noise, a monstrous choir, chased after me, a cacophony tangled in dire discontent. "Join us, Sarah," they cried in unison, and the sound twisted into something grotesque, curving around my skull, squeezing my thoughts, that I broke through the flimsy wall of nightmares, emerging into an alley that stood eerily still. It felt too quiet, too staged, like a play that awaited its opening night while the actors hovered just beyond the curtain. Flickering shadows darted across the ground, taunting me, and anxiety pricked at my skin like the chill of a winter breeze. Confusion morphed into dread as I glimpsed a silhouette at the far end of the alley, a looming figure bathed in liquid darkness, the shape blurring but unmistakable. "Sarah," it crooned, and my heart plummeted. The voice morphed with a serpentine cadence, weaving through the dim air. It wrapped around me like a warm embrace, familiar yet terrifying. There it stood, the gatekeeper, a silhouette cloaked in the shreds of my lost memories, its presence intertwining oblivion and fate. "You're trying to run," it said, the edges of its voice draping over me like an icy shroud. "But you'll soon understand. Every step you take, you tread closer to the inevitable end." I felt the terror solidify into something palpable, something looming and heavy. "What do you want from me?" I screamed, my voice breaking in a thrall of desperation. Its laughter echoed with an unearthly resonance. "Want? My dear, you are the last drop-off in our intricate delivery of souls. I require a vessel, a way to reconnect with the living plane. And here you are, a harbinger of despair, clutching the remnants of hope." I staggered back, panic clawing at my throat. "No, I won't become a part of this." "Oh, but you've already begun," it hissed, the shadows swirling around, echoing my despair in an unspeakable frenzy. "They'd chosen you even before that fateful night, an ordinary life punctured by the extraordinary. You'll follow the path." With a swift gesture, the gatekeeper flicked its wrist, and the shadows coalesced around me, wrapping tighter until my breath drew shorter. The edges of reality blurred, a alley darkening, the world shrinking into a singular point of dread where the end would merge with the beginning. I screamed. But the sound echoed in vain as I felt myself lifted from the ground, pulling me toward the abysmal void. Join us. The voices roared, harmonizing with the heavy pulse of the gatekeeper's essence. I caught sight of the figures from before their faces, twisting in forms of agony and delight, reaching toward me with fingers that shadowed my very existence. No, I cried, yet my voice felt small in this terrible feeding frenzy. The consciousness of those who had come before me enveloped memories that were never mine, suffocating me under the weight of their despair. The shadows spiraled into a vortex, dissolving the space around me, preparing to siphon my very essence. The last flicker of hope, a dim reminder of who I used to be, slipped further away. And just as I felt the tether of my soul fraying under the monstrous pull, I was yanked back into the shimmering light of the rift that echoed across spaces untold. The world distorted around me, glimpses of cloaked figures behind me, devouring the last remnants of my humanity. Then everything seemed to shatter into a kaleidoscope of fragmented visions, me life splintering before me into colors too bright to bear. Choose, thundered the gatekeeper, its voice a hurricane of rage and allure. Your time grows short, and with my fate hanging precariously above the abyss, I stood frozen, drifting in the swell of despair, the darkness of the shadows rising beneath me. As the ground beneath split further, time itself unraveling around my frayed edges, I realized that every decision I had made had pulled me tighter into this nightmare, toward an inevitable escape into the unknown. And at that moment, as I stood in the threshold between light and oppressive darkness, a shattering realization struck. A memory broke free from the void, the final drop-off I had completed just before the world slipped into chaos. A name, a face, a haunting echo of my past. And then, the ground opened wide. The yawning chasm beneath me swallowed the remnants of my sanity, a deep pit lined with the radials of forgotten sorrow that stretched endlessly into that ichorous void. The last flicker of light shrouded behind the ominous veil of the gatekeeper now lay just out of reach. Choose, the entity bellowed, each syllable reverberating in the marrow of my bones. The figures I had glimpsed earlier loomed larger, their twisted faces contorted in agony, each a lost soul desperately reaching for someone. With no other options left, I scrambled backward, clawing at the very air as panic seized my throat. The edges of reality blurred into shimmering nothingness, and for a breathless moment, I entertained an urge to give in, to let the shadows consume me wholly and merge me with the cacophony of despair that cradled the souls around me. But at that moment of surrender, a name soared through the fog. Jennifer, my long-lost sister, the one whose disappearance drove a wedge deep into the heart of my youth. Her face, framed by tresses of golden hair and a smile bright enough to chase shadows away, shone vibrant through the haze. I could recall that day like a ghostly specter, the laughter, the warmth, and then the silence. My heart surged with a blend of anguish and aching resolve as I realized that the depth of my connection to her lay at the very core of this nightmare. I choose her, I screamed into the void, the words bursting forth like a fevered confess Iona testament to the bond that had cultivated my very being. The shadows shuddered at my proclamation. You presume to defy the design? The gatekeeper's laughter twisted like a knife, deepening the shadows, as if the darkness itself momentarily recoiled in disbelief at my bravado. Yes, I shouted, and in an instant, the figures around me flickered and trembled, confusion writhing in their hollow eyes. I choose Jennifer. I want to find her. A sudden gust whipped through the alley, howling past me and folding the space around us like tattered canvas. The cryptic maw of the abyss unfurled, revealing a visage of flickering street lamps and a lonely road that kissed the underbelly of night. And within that whirlpool of darkness and light, the silhouettes whispered, each voice melding into one unified cry, words slipping through the frayed seams of consciousness, coaxing me into a forgotten moment. A foolish choice, the gatekeeper said, its voice now an unsettling blend of sweetness and sorrow. She cannot be saved. Her fate is sealed, as will yours be. Before I could gather my thoughts again, the ground gave way beneath my feet, the slippery edges consuming me in a swirling blizzard of blackness. until I landed somehow, violently upon the gravel of a desolate street. The wind whipped through the alleys, rusty remnants of laughter catching on the breeze like fleeting shadows. It was uncanny how familiar the air felt, familiar yet suffocating, its scent drenched in decay and dread. The streetlights glimmered through the thick fog like watcher eyes, each casting long, twisted shadows that elongated before me. In that moment of disorientation, I realized I wasn't alone. The figures from before edged closer, always lurking at the periphery, their intentions laced in ominous whispers. As they approached, I could sense their urgency, their needs, and I felt my own boundaries tremble under the weight of their silent screams. Continuing down the street, I moved closer to a long-abandoned diner, its windows cracked and broken, revealing a world frozen in time, as if forgotten by the living. Pressing my palm against the cold glass, I peered inside, hoping against hope to catch a glimpse of my sister or the ghosts of our memories. Yet, to my horror, the faces beyond the glass were not those I remembered. Instead, they were a distorted assembly of my past, the familiar and the unsettling, a montage of lost moments that never should have existed. Suddenly, through the clamor of memories, a sharp gasp escaped the skeletal lips of a woman haunting the far corner booth. My heart raced as I recognized those eyes, fierce and full of defiance yet glazed over with a veil of sorrow. It was her, Jennifer. The weight of my choice bore down on my chest. Instinctively, I reached for the door, only to feel the solid mass of unseen forces preventing my entry. The shadows rippled in Illyrians, dancing between me and her as if they were protecting their own. "Sarah," she cried, the sound wrenching heartstrings long dormant. "You shouldn't have come." But it was more than her voice. I was pulled in by the crimson thread of connection as panic surged through my veins, urging me to fight the barrier that pinned me back. "No, Jen. I'm here. I'm going to save you," I shouted, desperation tinging my voice with urgency as I pushed against the invisible force. But as I plummeted deeper into this harrowing connect-iona bond fraying like an old rope, I could feel the cold, creeping tendrils of the gatekeeper wrapping around my throat once more, hissing in my ear. "Her light is dimming, Sarah, and with it, your chances." Everything warped and contorted as I felt the shadows pulse beneath my feet, a vortex of despair swirling around me, threatening to consume me once more. The traces of my sister's fading essence began to wane, and just as I grasped desperately for the handle of the diner door, a bone-chilling voice cut through, one that chilled my mind and made my heart stammer. "Let her go." The shadows recoiled, and from the depths emerged a monstrous silhouette, aglow with the marrow of forgotten souls, tugging against my frayed edges, emotions colliding into something unfathomable. As the horrifying visage came into focus, shaft-formed faces and shapes merging into a wretched reflection of the sister I once knew, a paralyzing fear crawled its way through my spine. This was no ordinary darkness. It was an entity steeped in revenge, threading faint whispers of desires unsated and dreams shattered. My heart lunged against the gathering storm as those shadows, vanishing, along with Jennifer, curled into a final, devastating keening. And in that dizzying moment, just before the shadows gambled to swallow me whole, I caught a glimpse of a door, one that beckoned to me from another reality, a fleeting escape. All I had to do was reach for it. But I had dared to tread into a domain where darkness ruled. The choice loomed larger than myself as the shadows reached for me, and I stood at the precipice of fate, knowing that if I stepped through that door, I might lose her all over again. And then, the darkness whispered, sweet and sinister, enticing and cold, chilling my spirit to the bone. "Join us," and I fell into madness as I grasped the doorknob, not knowing if what lay on the other side was salvation or the end of everything I had ever known. The ground rattled violently underfoot as I stood before the fissured door, an ancient vessel of despair crafted in the shadows of time. I hesitated, heart pounding in my chest, confronted by memories of love and laughter intermingled with pain, betrayal, and the toll darkness had exacted upon me. Each memory served as a new stightening, suffocating, until I felt like a ghost in my own skin. "Let her go?" I demanded, my voice cracking like dry branches. Jennifer, sweet and innocent, was trapped within the diner, an ethereal prisoner tethered to the shadows, swirling hungrily outside. I could see her, anguish painted across her delicate features, as if her very essence was being siphoned away, tugged and twisted by a malevolent force that delighted in her suffering. I don't know, I screamed, desperation swelling within me like an insatiable tide. Drive pulled, the distraction claffalding my every step, my resolve teetering as the shadows fluttered around me, revealing the countless lost souls who had given in to despair and mourning remnants of lives just like mine. The gatekeeper loomed behind me, its presence suffocating, a black hole consuming everything it touched. You think you can reclaim what was lost? It hissed, a sinister grin stretching across teeth that glimmered like shards of glass. You are merely a pawn in this game, one of many. Deliver your soul unto us. I could feel the force of its words clawing at my senses, pulling my focus from Jennifer to the web of darkness that writhed. The shadows surged closer, their outstretched fingers promising release from Pina lie wrapped in velvet promises and deceit. They were beckoning, whispering sweetly of release and eternal union. But I won't let them. I choose her. I rebuked with every fiber of my being. Pain ripped through my heart like an ice pick, jagged and consuming. I couldn't surrender. I turned once more, fixing my eyes on Jennifer, whose glow flickered like a dying candle flame, desperate for the warmth of a kindred spirit. As I gathered all my strength, I charged toward the diner door, undeterred by the chaos surging around me. Shadows collided violently against my skin, but they could not drag me back into despair. I felt invigorated, driven by memories shared in the living light. Stay with me, Jennifer. I won't lose you again, I cried out, reaching for the door handle, feeling the cold metal bite into my palm. I pulled with every ounce of strength I possessed. The barrier between us wavered, rippling like water, and for an instant, I glimpsed the warmth of her vibrant soul inside. The room flickered, enchanting and filled with life, and I knew that there was hope. But then the shadows lunged forward, enveloping me in their embrace, cold and cloying. You are ours, they hissed, their voices a cacophony of violent laughter and anguish. It was as if they were the culmination of my subconscious, completing the circle of despair. No, I bellowed as I pushed harder against the door, the shadows clawing furiously, threatening to steal my very will. I choose love. I refuse to become what you want. Let her go. In a moment of clarity, I envisioned myself entwined with Jennifer, feeling the bond we shared, a connection that lingered and pulsed with hope amid the darkness. It was then that reality shifted. The power of my love and determination surged forth like a flood, breaking the chains of fear binding me. The door swung open with a deafening groan, revealing the diner interior dark, yet glimmering, a paradox of the melancholy that threatened to consume us. Inside, Jennifer's fizzling figure found solidity. Sarah, she called, voice trembling with fear and disbelief. I surged through the door, crossing into the familiar space made foreign by my own guilt-ridden memories. I reached out toward her. I'm here. I won't let you go. But just as my fingertips grazed her ethereal form, shadows crashed down between us. The gatekeeper's laughter vibrated through my bones, an echoing threat promising the impending doom. Darkness unfurled like wings, casting a net around us, thick with anguish and despair. I warned you, it rumbled, gaining strength. The very diner quaked with its malevolence, each shadow yearning to draw me back to the abyss. You cannot shelter the light. Embrace your fate. You are destined to join us, not if I can help it, I cried, drawing all the warmth of memories shared with Jennifer, laughter on sunlit days, bonding, the glow of innocence unmarred. I tightened my grip around her, channeling every ounce of love I had for her into the space between us. In defiance of despair, I let go of everything and dove into the depths of the shadows swirling around us. What are you doing? Jennifer gasped, confusion and fear coursing through her eyes. But I knew what I had to do. I wouldn't move to save just myself. I had to sacrifice my essence to pull her back into the light with me. And then I felt a jolt of electricity as my love coursed through us, a shield against the seeping darkness. It was enough to create a fissure between light and shadow, illuminating the diner with a brilliance that momentarily stunned the ravenous void. The gatekeeper faltered, startled by the strength of our bond. No, it roared, its form writhing as tendrils of darkness dissipated like smoke. But I held firm, my focus unwavering, guided by only the certainty that our connection could break through. I pulled. With one explosive yank, I drew her back toward me. "You are not coming back," I shouted, knowing we had a choice to retrieve the fragments of ourselves we thought lost forever. The darkness screamed a deafening, tortured wail that erupted as the bond forged between us flickered in the final throes of confrontation. With one last scream, I felt us break that barrier. I laughed, Jennifer laughed, and the resonance of our shared triumph shattered the oppressive hold of the shadows. And then, silenced, we emerged into brightness, a wave of warmth washing over us like the dawn of a long-awaited day, brilliant and pure. I collapsed on the floor of the diner, panting, the weight of despair feeling as light as air. Chaos had receded like a tide, leaving behind memories of lost souls in the depths of a love forever unforgotten. Jennifer knelt beside me, cradling my face in her hands. You did it," she breathed, wonder dripping from her voice. "You found me." The shadows that had lingered shrank back at the edges of our new reality, powerless against the bond forged by love. Yet as I looked at her, nestled beside me, there was an unsettling truth unfurling in my heart, a haunting whisper echoing in the recesses of my mind, as if warning me of the darkness that still lingered. I could feel it watching, waiting. The very foundation beneath our feet trembled softly, that chilling laughter resurfacing within the corners of my consciousness, dark and inviting that I will take what belongs to me. I heard the gatekeeper's voice curl through my thoughts, promising that the darkness would always haunt the edges of my existence, ever patiently waiting for the chance to reclaim its hold. And as I held Jennifer close, a chilling thought settled upon my chest. Perhaps not all choices lead to salvation. Perhaps the horrors of the past linger eternally, waiting for the right moment to strike. "Are you ready, Sarah?" she asked, a glint of fear in her eyes that I nodded slowly, for the shadows might have receded for now, but deep down, I understood the pact we had unwittingly made. Not all doors could ever be truly closed. In that moment, as warmth encased us both, I knew that we were marked, one foot in light, one foot in shadow, forever tethered to the darkness, waiting for the inevitable moment when we would once again face the gatekeeper. And then, with a jolt, I remembered. It was only the beginning, and deep within me, the voice echoed, a haunting refrain, a reminder that the darkness, although momentarily vanquished, would always come to collect its due when least expected, eternally lurking in the shadows of our souls.